When things fall apart, it's rarely a dramatic explosion. It's slower, quieter, little fractures forming until the whole foundation starts to give way. That night, I sat waiting for Sam to come home. Midnight came and went, and so did my patience. She had gone out with friends, saying she needed some space. But when the front door finally creaked open, my heart sank. Her hair was a tangled mess, like she'd been caught in a windstorm. The edges of her clothes were torn, hanging loosely on her frame. And there was something else, something I couldn't pretend not to see. A faint, undeniable dampness on her thighs. I froze. The scent hit me next. Cologne. Not hers. Not mine. Someone else's, someone I didn't know. I helped her into the bathroom, cleaned her up, then guided her to bed. My voice stayed as steady as I could make it. "What happened, Sam?" I asked, clinging to the hope there was some reasonable explanation. But her glassy, unfocused eyes never met mine. She mumbled through a fog of alcohol, her words hitting me harder than any blow. "It didn't mean anything, just once. I'm sorry." That "I'm sorry" cut deeper than I could handle. Sorry for what? I wanted to demand the full truth, to shout until she gave it to me. But I couldn't. Not when she was like that. I swallowed hard, tucked her in, and left the room. My heart wanted to believe there was still hope. My gut told me otherwise. By morning, the haze had lifted for her, but the weight in my chest hadn't. Samantha stumbled awake, groaning, holding her head as if it might split open. I could hear her moving in the bedroom, probably trying to piece together the missing hours. I was already in the kitchen, staring at the evidence on the table. I hadn't slept. My mind wouldn't stop replaying her slurred words, the smell of another man's cologne, and the things I'd seen. When she walked in, she was still wearing the wrinkled clothes from the night before. Her eyes were swollen and red. At first, she just looked puzzled, until she saw the photographs I'd laid out. Close-up shots. The stains on her dress, a faint but visible handprint near her waist. I had taken them the night before, not out of cruelty, but because I needed proof of what I could hardly process. "Do you even remember what you did last night?" I asked, my voice shaking, not from anger, but from the ache deep in my chest. Her expression changed instantly. Panic. Guilt. Recognition. She didn't need clarification. She knew. She broke down in the kitchen, shoulders trembling, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake." Her words were cold steel against my ribs. "A mistake?" I cut in. "You didn't just trip and fall into this. You made choices. You walked into that bar, got drunk, and let another man into your bed." She tried to explain, to twist it into something about her state of mind, but I couldn't accept it. Her tears no longer moved me. They felt hollow, just like her excuses. And that's when it truly sank in. She wasn't apologizing for what she'd done to me. She was apologizing to make herself feel lighter. That, more than anything, was the blow I couldn't absorb. She didn't grasp the depth of the damage. Not to me, not to us, not to our marriage. I couldn't listen anymore. I stood, met her tearful eyes and said, "I need some air." Then I left her there, surrounded by the wreckage she had created. You don't just walk away from something like this and carry on. Not when trust is smashed into pieces. Not when the unanswered questions keep clawing at you in the quiet moments. I tried, God knows I tried, to push it aside, to pretend it was something I could get over. But the same thoughts came back, over and over. Who was he? Why her? And worst of all, how long had this been going on? Samantha's drunken rambling had been messy and disjointed, but hidden between the slurred sentences were enough fragments for me to piece together a dangerous truth. One name stood out: Adam. That was all it took to set me on a path I couldn't turn away from. It didn't take long to find him. In the age of social media, all it takes is a determined mind and a few clicks to connect the dots. Adam was exactly the type you'd expect. Well-groomed, smooth-talking, the kind of man who could walk into any room and own it without lifting a finger. Polished, confident, charming. The kind of man people trusted far too easily. But it wasn't his charisma that stopped me cold. It was something else. Samantha followed him online, and he followed her back. This wasn't some nameless stranger from a bar. They knew each other. Then came the detail that truly turned my stomach. Adam was married. Not just married. He had children. His profile was filled with picture-perfect moments. Smiling family photos on tropical beaches, birthday parties with balloons and candles, lazy Sunday mornings tangled in blankets, the kind of snapshots that scream perfect life. He looked like a man who had everything. Then again, so had I once. The deeper I dug, the more the pieces aligned into a picture I didn't want to see. But I needed to know how deep their connection ran. That meant getting into Samantha's phone. She had no idea I was watching. Late at night, while she slept, I unlocked it and began scrolling. The messages were there, short, seemingly casual exchanges, but damning all the same. Adam knew she'd be at the bar that night. They talked about it beforehand. It wasn't coincidence, it was arranged. Their tone was light, but the subtext was clear. This wasn't a momentary lapse or drunken impulse. It was planned. Intentional. They might not have written the details outright, but they both understood exactly what they were doing. By the time I put the phone down, my hands were shaking. That night I made a choice. Adam's wife deserved to know exactly who she was married to. She needed the truth, the unvarnished truth, just as I had. And once I had dealt with him, I would turn back to Samantha. The divorce papers were already in motion, but before I could close that chapter, I wanted closure. I had a name. I had proof. Now I had a plan. This wasn't about petty revenge. It was about justice. If my marriage was collapsing, his wouldn't survive untouched. The only question was how to approach his wife, Charlotte. Some people might say it wasn't my place, but I didn't see it that way. She had a right to know. I reached out carefully, crafting a short message saying I needed to discuss something important. She replied that same day. We agreed to meet at a small, quiet cafe downtown. A neutral place where emotions wouldn't spiral into chaos. Charlotte was already seated when I arrived. She looked simple yet put together, dark hair tied back neatly, modest clothes, and an expression that carried a hint of nervousness. She smiled faintly when I introduced myself, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. When she spoke of Adam, her face softened. There was love there, clear and unguarded, which made what I had to do all the more difficult. I didn't dance around it. Your husband had an affair with my wife, I said, my voice flat, unflinching. Her polite smile vanished instantly, replaced by disbelief. She set her coffee cup down with trembling hands, staring at me as though I'd just spoken a language she couldn't understand. Without another word, I reached into my bag and placed the evidence on the table. Screenshots of their messages. Time-stamped photos from that night. And a recording, Samantha's voice, drunken but unmistakable, saying Adam's name. Charlotte's fingers hesitated before picking up the photos. She listened to the recording in silence, her face growing paler with each passing second. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. She just sat there, holding the proof of her husband's betrayal, as the life she thought she knew began to crack apart right in front of her. Her eyes shimmered, but the tears stayed trapped, refusing to fall. She sat completely still, lips trembling as she tried to take it all in. When she finally spoke, her voice was unsteady yet determined. "Thank you for telling me." I gave a short nod and rose from my seat. There was nothing else to add. As I stepped out of the coffee shop, a storm churned inside me, anger tangled with relief, and a flicker of guilt I wished I didn't feel. Whatever came next between Adam and Charlotte was no longer my concern. My focus had to be on reclaiming my own life, and that meant cutting Samantha out of it entirely. When I returned home, the place no longer felt familiar. The walls seemed colder, the air heavier. Samantha was just a faint outline of the woman I once knew. The guilt clung to her, visible in her hollow gaze and the way her shoulders slumped as if they carried the weight of her choices. She made desperate attempts to repair what she had shattered. First came the tears. She wept daily, begging me to listen, to understand, to allow her another chance. "I'll do anything," she pleaded. "Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes." But whenever I looked at her, the image of betrayal was all I saw. Then came the notes, tiny scraps of paper hidden in my coat pockets or left neatly on my pillow. Words scribbled in hope. "I love you. I'll never hurt you again. Please don't give up on us." At first, I read every one of them. Soon I stopped. She started cooking dinner every evening, making all my favorite meals, as though seasoning and effort could erase what had been done. But I couldn't sit across the table from her and pretend. The fracture between us was too deep. Part of me wished I could believe her. I wanted to find forgiveness, to salvage the years we had built together. But the moment I pictured her with someone else, my stomach knotted and my chest tightened. The trust and respect we once had were gone beyond repair. One night, she stood before me in the living room. Her face blotched from hours of crying, her voice a thin whisper. "Please, Brad," she said. "I love you. I'll do anything to fix this." For the first time in days, I looked directly at her. "I don't think so," I said quietly but firmly. The words hit her like a blow. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, clutching her chest as though her heart had been crushed. Maybe, in that moment, she finally felt a fraction of the pain she had given me. The next few days passed in an oppressive silence. No shouting, no bitter arguments, just the suffocating reminder of what she'd done. For a brief moment, I hoped the quiet might bring clarity, that maybe we could piece something back together. But deep down I knew the truth. Some things are beyond repair. I started preparing for the inevitable. I went through our accounts, sorted important papers, and tied up anything that needed closing. I thought about our past, the joy, the struggles, and wondered if it was worth clinging to. That morning, I walked into the living room. Samantha sat there, eyes locked on the floor, as though it might reveal the answers she craved. When she finally looked up, her tear-swollen eyes met mine. Her face pale and worn from nights without sleep. In my hands were the divorce papers. I hesitated, not out of uncertainty, but because I knew once I handed them over, there would be no turning back. It wasn't just a decision. It was the moment I knew everything had reached its true and final end. "You made your choice that night," I told her, my voice calm but unwavering. "Now this is mine." I placed the documents on the coffee table between us. She froze, her body stiffening as the weight of what I was saying settled over her. Her hands trembled as she reached for the papers. "Brad, no, please," she whispered, her voice cracking with desperation. "We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." She sank to her knees, clutching my hand, sobbing so violently I feared she might lose her breath. "Don't do this," she begged. "Please don't throw us away." But deep down I knew the truth. She had already thrown it all away. With one selfish act, she had destroyed the trust we had spent years building. And without trust, there was nothing left worth saving. I gently pulled my hand from hers, my resolve unshaken. "I can't," I said, shaking my head slowly. "I've tried, Sam. I've turned it over in my mind 100 different ways. But I can't see you the same anymore. I can't see us the same." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The finality in my words said everything. I turned and walked out, leaving her crumpled on the floor, her sobs echoing in the room behind me. As I left, a strange combination of emotions took hold. Grief, yes, but also a deep sense of relief. For the first time in days, I could breathe again. It wasn't the ending I had once imagined for us, but it was the one I needed. Some choices cut too deep to heal from, and hers was one of them. It's strange how the end of something that once meant the world can feel so hollow. Yet that was my reality. I walked away from that marriage a free man, though freedom didn't look the way I thought it would. For weeks, I couldn't bring myself to step into our bedroom. The scent of her lingered there, tangled with memories I didn't want to revisit. I slept on the couch instead. But slowly, things began to change. I stopped staring at the empty spaces where she used to be, and began imagining new ones. I replaced the furniture, rearranged the living room, even painted the walls a new color. It was my quiet way of reclaiming my home, of saying, "This is mine now." I wasn't just restoring a house. I was restoring myself. The cracks she left behind didn't vanish, and the scars stayed, but over time, they ached less. In their place, I discovered something I hadn't felt in years: peace. As for Samantha, I don't know exactly where life took her. Once the divorce papers were signed, our paths stopped crossing. I only heard fragments, how she had trouble moving on, how things weren't easy for her. People like to say that time heals all wounds. I don't believe that. Time doesn't erase pain. It teaches you to carry it, to grow around it. For me, that meant learning to appreciate solitude. I'd rather live quietly, content in my own company, than be bound to a marriage built on betrayal. And Samantha, I hope she learns to live with the choices she made. Not for me, but for herself. In the end, we both lost something. I lost the woman I thought I knew. She lost the life we built together. But the difference is, I gained something far greater. I found myself. And that, more than anything else, was worth every painful step it took to get here.